Hello everyone, welcome. Today my plan is I have just like 15-20 minutes to work on some open source stuff, and my goal is to fix a bug that was recently reported in GenFu. Today my plan is I have just like 15-20 minutes to work on some open source stuff, and my goal is to fix a bug that was recently reported in... Okay. So let's start by pulling up the GenFu repo here. So if you're not familiar with GenFu, or you're not using it in your projects, it's a library that James Chambers originally created, and then Simon Timms and myself, we kind of jumped in and also contributed quite a bit to the project. But it helps you to generate kind of realistic looking test data. So as an example, if you had a list of person classes, you wanted a list of person classes, and it had things like first name, last name, age, you could ask GenFu to generate a collection of those for you, and it would fill it with things that made it look like it was a real person. So the names would actually be names. It wouldn't just be kind of garbage data. It would be data that at least looked real. So recently there was an issue logged. Well, there are many issues logged. One of those being, is the project still alive? So yes, it is, but we haven't been dedicating enough time to it. So one of my goals this year is to spend a little bit more time on the project, and this bug here is one that I'd like to try to reproduce first, and then hopefully fix that bug if we can get that far. But at a minimum, we're going to start with writing a unit test here to reproduce the bug. So the bug is that this user object is configured to have access failed count within a specific range. So that value should always be between 0 and 3. And then when they go to generate those application user objects, it's filling it with values that are outside of that range. So first thing we want to do is come in here, and what I was just doing before, I updated my code to the latest, and it's been a while since I've actually run this project, so I made sure that I could build it. And it does build, and then I went to run the unit tests, and here I'm actually getting some random failures with my unit tests, which is a little bit of a concern for me. I think that some of that might have to do with it's kind of random which ones are failing. So let's take a look at the source of what's happening here. So here we're saying Phil's using the price filler, so price shouldn't be negative. And what's a checkout item in here? There's a price 1 amount and a price 2 amount. And we're expecting those to fill with the price filler, which should always be above 0. And it seems like it's not. So I wonder if that maybe is even part of the existing bug. But let's see if we can reproduce specifically the bug that's happening. So we should have some tests in here somewhere related to the range filler. So here we're saying int range within bounds on generated value. So here we configure a person, and we tell it to fill the age within the minimum and maximum age. And after we create that person, we make sure that it's within that range. So that actually is working in the scenario here of the unit tests that we've created, but very likely there's something about the scenario here that this person has outlined that specifically exposes this bug. So let's see what is the minimum amount of code we can write here to reproduce this. So using application user, which I assume would be application user from an Asp.Net user class, the ones that are from Asp.Net identity. But let's just kind of from memory see if I can create a a test class of that kind of shape. Where do we have test classes in our, there we go, test entities. So I'm going to create one called application user just to kind of match the use case here that was outlined. So this one is going to have a property called, an integer called access failed count. Now, is access failed count? I wonder if that's an int or a nullable int. We'll come back and check that. I know it also has a string that's an ID. Well, I'll ignore that for now. So public string email. It has a string phone number. It has a date time, which is called created at. They have an enum called gender, so public gender. And then I'm just going to create a new enum here. I created it as a class. I'll change that to an enum. I know that they have a female option and a male option. I'm just going to go with those two for this example. And I'll go female. Male, female, and other not specified. Okay, so we have an enum there. We have whether the email is confirmed or not, which is a Boolean. And what else do we have here in the, we know that they also have an ID, so public string ID. Okay. And that should be application user. Now to go back and reproduce this issue, go to the tests. We had this guy here. We're going to do another fact here called I'll just call it for complex configuration. Then I'm actually just going to exactly copy what the person posted in the GitHub issue. So, no, that's a string. Okay, what's the complaint about here? It says cannot implicitly convert type string to short. Oh, we need a username as well on the, okay, so username. Oh, that's interesting what they did there. So they're generating the email address as a function of the username and the phone number. That's cool. So then everything's kind of consistent for this entity. Okay, so my application user also needs to have a username. Public string username. And here we're just going to say gender.female. And then phone number confirmed is another one that we need. So email confirmed, phone number confirmed. Okay, I think we got everything we need now. So we should be able to, Oh, and they're saying ID is a GUID, not a string. Good enough. That's easy to change. Okay, so now what we want to do is check that call this a user, that the user's accessed failed count is greater than or equal to 0, and access failed count is less than or equal to 3. I'm going to go and run this. I'll just run this one test. And that succeeded. Very strange. Now, I know that we have some strange issue with the ordering of properties in the collection. Or in the class. I don't know if this is one of those issues. Well, let's rerun this to see. Nope, that's still succeeding. And let's just debug this so that I can see what these users look like, just to kind of confirm it with my own eyes. Not that I don't trust the assertion here. So here's my user, and there's my access failed count. It is 1. Here's the issue with the ordering of things. My email is defined probably before username and phone number, so it tries to fill the email before knowing what these values are, so it gets null values for those. So my email just ends up being .@gmail.com for everyone. That's kind of a separate bug that would be good to fix. And the fix for that one is just to, the quick workaround for that is to move the username and phone number property definitions before the email. So now if I run that, it will work. That part of it will work, but that's not the bug we're trying to fix here. Ooh, I wonder if... Okay, so I just had an idea, but just to confirm, yeah, there's my email now that has the username.phonenumber@gmail.com. Okay, so I just had an idea that maybe this has something to do with base classing. No, I think we have unit tests around that already. Let me just check. There's a person class. Do we have anything that has go to implementation? Yeah, we have this concept of a profile that inherits from person. I'm going to test this theory anyway. I'm wondering if maybe it has something to do with when a property is defined on the base class instead of on the current class. So if I wonder if there's a refactoring here where I can extract a base class. No. Okay, I'm just going to say public class application user base here. And I'm going to move a few things into the base class. Let's see if those if those rules don't get applied the way we expect them to. Okay, so application user base. Head back over to our tests, and I'm just going to run it this time, see if I get a different result. Aha. Well then. I think we might be onto something. I probably wouldn't have thought of that if this user hadn't posted the bug as being from application user. But just knowing that application user inherits from some classes in the base libraries for Asp.NET Identity, I kind of clued in on that possibility. Okay, so yeah, now my access failed count is 85 instead of following this within range. Okay, so now that we can reproduce it, let's see if we have time to actually fix the bug today. We might run out of time here because I don't have a lot of time to stream today. But let's take a look. So this within range registers a filler, an int filler of type T. It's been a while since I've worked on this, so this will be kind of interesting to start digging into. But there's a filler manager. We register this filler. And the way the filler manager works is it says so we have a dictionary string property filler. And let's just see what happens when we go to create this user. I'm going to step into it and see if I can figure out what the property fillers are that are registered. I have a feeling that when it goes to configure it, it overwrites itself with data for when it gets to the base class properties. So let's have a look here. Yeah, I'm going to debug this. And then I'm going to step into the call to a new application user. Oops. I'll have to do that again. I hit the wrong button. Okay, so this is the code where we start to go and loop through the properties and set the values if there is one, if there is a property filler for it. So we get the type, which is of the application user type. And now we loop over all the properties. So here we have the username property, goes and sets a value for it. Next is the phone number property, email, created at, gender, email confirmed, phone number confirmed, ID, so the next one here should be our access failed count. Okay, so now we're going to say default value checker.has value. So we check to see if it has a value or not, and it shouldn't. No, because it's 0, that's the default value. It knows it doesn't have one yet. Then we can write to that property, so we're going to go and set it. Now it's going to the filler manager and saying, get me the filler for this particular property. Let's go step into that now. Here, our property info says that the type is application user base, and that might be part of our problem, because it's not going to be registered on that type, it's going to be registered on the application user type, I suspect. Okay, so we step into this. Object type is application user base, and if we look at all our specifically registered ones, we have an ID property that's registered on application user base. But the access failed count for some reason is actually registered on application user. So that's interesting. It seems like we have some special code in there that handled the case for the ID property, but it didn't handle it for this other one. So I see that the registration is incorrect. So what it's doing now is going to see if there's a matching one for this property, which it won't find. It'll return null. Oh, so now looking for the class specifically, it's still null. Okay. A little bit better understanding of what's happening there, but let's see if we can dig into this a little. So I'm curious about why that GUID filler. How did I register that ID one? Oh, just with a specific value. Okay, so that is the it says custom filler T2 T1 registers the custom filler. When we're registering a property filler, we're looking for the specific object name of that filler. And the object name in this case for the custom filler property name, object type, and we say if the object type is not object, then add all base types. Add all base types says so the custom filler has this concept of adding, registering all the base types as well as the current type, which is probably the logic that we have missing from the integer one. So when we look at the code path, going back to our test that we wrote, this within range guy here, it creates an int filler as compared to this one here, which creates a custom filler. So let's take a look at the within range. What it does, creates an int filler, which I suspect lacks all of that logic.
Liking and disliking are not supported on Spotify.
Alexa interrupting my stream. Be quiet, Alexa. Okay. So this is kind of a bigger problem here now because I see that we're gonna. I've muted Alexa and it's still trying to interrupt me with things. So this is going to be a problem on all of our property fillers essentially. So I wonder if this logic that we have in the custom filler, if there's a way that we can push this down into the property filler. But let's keep this guy open and let's take a look at the custom filler. Let's see again what's special about it. So it has what's it doing here with add all base types? This is the important part. So there's an object type names. Is that from the base class? It is, okay. I'm thinking that this should be something that we have in the root class, in the property filler class. So this calls the base here. I wonder if we can just do this. So I'm going to take this logic and put it here. I see. So what I'm going to do, I don't know if this is a good approach yet, but what I'm going to say is if object type names dot length is 1, if there's only one type that was passed in, then I'm going to do this logic that we had here. So then I'm going to say object type equals object type names 0. Oh, now that particular object type was an actual type, not, okay. I'm seeing the difference here in how these are used now. Okay, maybe what I need is an override to this thing that takes in a type instead. I think that's what it is. Okay, backing up. I think there's still a way I can do this here internally. So I can have a version of this. Nope. It essentially looks like this guy. It's going to be a constructor to property filler that takes in a type instead of a type name. It's going to call the base this internal constructor here, and then what I'm going to do is, do I need to set the filler? I don't think so. Also doesn't have the filler. Okay, so yeah, it's going to call the base, or this constructor here that sets the type names and initial pieces the way we expect it to, and then I'm going to basically do that logic that we were doing over in the custom filler. So now here, instead of doing this and that I'm actually going to call the object type. I'm going to call that version of the base constructor. One that takes in, I got that backwards. Just going to reverse or change the order of these parameters here. So that I can just say object type. Property name. And then I don't need this here anymore because that should get called by the base class. And now in my integer filler, where's that guy? Numeric filler. So this int filler here now, what it should be doing is calling, as long as I call a different version of the constructor on the base class, object type property name. So inherits from property filler, that's the same thing that this guy does. Oh, is generic. How's that being used? False. That would be false, I think, is what I want. Back to my numeric filler, I can pass in false here. Okay, let's see if this builds. I think that's going to fix the bug, but there's some things I want to change about the way this is structured to avoid that problem again. Okay, so that builds. Now back to our tests. I'm going to try running this before I don't need to debug it. I'm just going to run it and see if it succeeds. And it did. Let's run all of our tests and see if I broke something else. Looking for all green, other than the ones that randomly fail, like this date time one. Yeah, that looks pretty good so far. I'm going to just run this again. I suspect these ones that failed, if I run them individually, they're going to pass, which is a completely different problem that we'll need to fix at a different time, but at least I think we figured out what was going on with this issue that was logged. So let's, there's more work I want to do, but let's create a branch here and check this in. So this is going to be git checkout, and check out a new branch, call it bug fix, and what was it was bug number 151. Adding all these files to my, so I can check them in here. Oh, that wasn't in the right folder. That's why git add dot didn't work. Okay, git status, git commit. So we're fixing the issue with numeric fillers not respecting configuration. And I'm going to push that up. And we're running out of time for this stream, so what I'm going to do, there are definitely some things I want to change here. One of those is I want to isolate. We have a lot of extra information in this unit test that we wrote. I actually want to clean that up so that it's just exposing exactly the problem that occurred. And then I want to go through and clean this up. So, well, write a few more unit tests to expose the same problem on some of the other property fillers, and then kind of clean up this interface here so that we avoid that problem altogether. We don't want that happening again with any of these property fillers. So, but for now, what I'm going to do is just write an update on this blog post here. I'm going to create a pull request that is a work in progress one. So don't merge, more work coming to fix this issue with other property fillers. So I'm just going to create that pull request, and then that will kick off a build, I believe. Thought we had that set up with this project, but maybe not. But what I wanted to do is come in here and actually update this person so they know that I'm working on this, and just say, working on a fix and have identified the source of the problem. CPR number right here, 153, comment. And that's it. Okay, so that's all we had time for today. I'll hopefully come back later this week and do that little bit of cleanup that I talked about and finish fixing the other places where I'm pretty sure this bug exists. And that's it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. If there's any improvements you can think of on my streaming setup or ways that I can do this better. Otherwise, hope you found it useful and helpful, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.